Good evening, friends, readers, and book lovers. My name is Elizabeth Bosher, and I am the events coordinator for Schuler Books. And I want to thank you all for joining us tonight as we are going to be talking about the book, The Collectors, with this wonderful group of contributors. And we're just so excited to be having this conversation together. Schuler Books is an independent bookstore with 4 locations in Michigan. You can follow along with all the bookstore happenings on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, although it's not called Twitter anymore, but we'll pretend. If you still need a copy of The Collectors and wish to support this independent bookstore, please reference the link that I'm going to drop in the chat here. Or you can visit one of our brick and mortar locations in Grand Rapids, Okemos, Ann Arbor, or West Bloomfield. We are going to begin here in a minute, and I just want to do a couple housekeeping things. Keep in mind that throughout the event, if you have a question, we would love to hear about it, and that it is easiest for us to find that if you drop it in the Q&A bubble that should be on the bottom of your screen. Also, we'll get to those questions near the end, so if we haven't gotten it to it yet, don't worry, we'll get there closer to the end of the time. Now I'm going to pass it over to our host this evening and pass it to Amy.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you for having us. I am so stoked. But before I get into talking about these guys or talking to these guys, I just want to say supporting independent booksellers is really important to authors. I think I can say that across the board because the farther we get into 2023, 2020, as the years go on, independent booksellers become more and more important. If you like the work of anyone you see here or anyone at all that writes books, you want to support independent booksellers because they're the ones that support us as authors. And so please, if you haven't bought the book yet and you'd like a copy, or if you think, wow, I have the book, but I'd love to give one to my friend so-and-so, pop onto the Schuler book page, click the button, or go to that link, actually, that's right there in the chat, which is exactly why Elizabeth put that there to make it very easy, and purchase a book through that independent bookseller. It's always important to remind you guys, or I don't think I never knew this when I was just a book buyer. When I read books, I didn't know it mattered where I bought them. It really matters where you buy them. And I wouldn't be working if it wasn't for independent booksellers. And I won't be if suddenly it just becomes a 1 or 2 horse race. So this is important. Anyway, so hi, how's it going? It's Tuesday. All day I thought it was Wednesday. So it's really confused me. I got panicked a few times. I was like, oh no, I missed the event. Wait. So I'm here with David and Randy and Cory, and I would like to really quickly go around and tell people who you are. So basically like the introduction of you. So I'm going to start. I'm going to say, hey, I'm A.S. King, and I write young adult novels, and most recently Switch and Dig from Dutton. I also write middle grade novels, most recently Attack of the Black Rectangles from Scholastic. Yay, and I'm very happy to be here tonight. I'm going to ask Randy going next. We're going to do a lot of popcorn tonight because I can only see you guys in a certain... Anyway, Randy, go.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I'm Randy Ribay. Write young adult novels mostly, number of short stories that come out this year. Most probably well known for my most recent one, Patron Saints of Nothing, which is about a Filipino-American teenager tries to find out what happened to his cousin who was killed in the drug war in the Philippines. I'm excited to be here tonight, and I'm going to pass it to Cory.
And I remembered to unmute before I started speaking, so we're already off to the races here. I'm up in Vermont, and I drove to Boston and back again today. And so I'm very excited to be here. And also I have soul lag, like who knows where I am, but my face is here. And I write books. I've written many at this point. My new ones are, I wrote the book Man of War, which is a YA novel. I had a picture book about Khalil Gibran. It came out last year that I'm very proud of, called Hope is an Arrow. And next month, I'm wrapping up a trilogy, sci-fi middle grade adventure extravaganza. So if that's something you're interested in, you can go to my webpage and it has all the stuff. That's me. It's all you, David.
All right. I'm very excited to be here. To me, it's Monday because yesterday was Yom Kippur. So I'm like, wait, what? No, it's not Wednesday. It's Monday. Wait, no, it's not Monday. It's okay. So yeah, so am I write a lot of YA books in middle grade, specifically queer YA in middle grade. My latest novel came out, what is time? 2 weeks ago? I think it's 2 weeks ago. It's called Ryan and Avery, tracing two boys on their first 10 dates and sort of looking at it with a very, very, very close-up lens. But then the collectors came out and suddenly it wasn't my newest book. Suddenly the collectors became my newest book. So it was my newest book for exactly a week. And then the collectors came.
That's a great way to look at it. I like that. And I can't believe that was 2 weeks ago, to be honest, because I was actually going to say, no, that's not true. I was going to disagree and say, no, it was just last week. But
Right.
That's how fast the last 2 weeks went, David.
Yeah.
They were kind of crazy. So I want to talk. Okay. So I want to talk about your stories, but first I want you to just read me about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, something like that of your story. I want you to start it. Start wherever you want to. It doesn't have to be from the beginning. Hopefully you guys remember that I warned you about this. Sorry. And but I'm going to start with actually I'm going to go backwards. David, do you mind starting?
Okay. I'm going to be like a minute because either the episodes in my story were too long or too short for the 3 to 4 minutes.
Well,
so my story.
You.
What?
We would forgive you if you went over. Now I'm muted.
I know, but you'll love me for going short. So why would I be forgiven if I can be loved? Although now this introduction is going to be like 5 minutes long. So the story, I don't remember what the story is titled. Take
it from me.
Take it from me. Thank you.
It's a very clever.
Oh, look,
title.
It's on the top of the page. That's amazing. I'm looking at digitally, obviously. And it is basically about a kid who collects by stealing from other people's collections. So this is just a brief passage from maybe a third of the way through. Is it hormonal, the way that most kids get to a certain age and don't bother with collections anymore? It's a benign neglect. I don't think many kids actually proclaim, I am done with collections. Collections are for babies, the way they do with, say, dolls or training wheels. But when the time comes for a room makeover, the collections are among the first things to be sent to the reliquary in the basement, or, if storage is tight, eternal rest in the nearest landfill. The majority of teens let go of whatever they once gathered because the gathering was nominal, almost obligatory. And the minority who keep hold, well, they keep hold hard because the gathering runs deep. I was not a teen who collected friends, who wanted my birthday party to be the event of the season. The fact that I was friends with a lot of kids seemed almost accidental. I had an O-negative personality. I had inadvertently fashioned myself into someone who wasn't a confessor or a competitor, but was always a good person to have around. I didn't do this in order to gain access to their lives or their collections, but I didn't balk when opportunities arose to suss out those friends who still collected and to take a piece of whatever they'd gathered. It would be a mistake to think that the collectors were always the outcasts or the misfits, substituting decorative thimbles for social interactions. In 9th grade, Antonio Perch, junior varsity quarterback, was obsessive about his coin collection, the concept being that money you never spent would someday be worth much more than its face value. I substituted my own Iowa State quarter for his Iowa State quarter so I wouldn't compromise his completism. Sandra Diaz, who at least 7 people of various genders wanted to ask to the homecoming dance, had never smoked a cigarette in her life, but she'd inherited an ashtray collection from her grandmother and felt it her filial duty to continue, even if ashtrays were harder and harder to come by. Even though it was a large item for me, I took one from the annex of undisplayed ashtrays from a golf tournament in 1978. And then there was Hannah Kors, my first truly kleptomaniac friend. ... I leave it there.
Oh, that's brilliant, David. Oh, Hannah. I don't have this. I have this only for David. My apologies. I only actually had two things that I found that would go with these nights. And one was, if you've read the actual collection, then you will know that the Glass Bluebird, when I found it, was very special. And I thought, I'm going to have this. It's going to remind me of the first story in the collection by A.M. and Anna Marie McLemore. But David, I will tell you, because it started with a spoon. This is from Amsterdam. I don't steal things normally. Anyway, so there's a hotel. They had plenty of spoons. I can't hear you because you muted yourself, but I love that you're talking.
And you can't invite me over to your house, or I may steal from your collection.
Well,
so.
you know, you never. It's here, right? You see where it is.
Yep.
So if you're here, when you're here next,
I think it's a trap. I think she's setting a trap. Don't you think she's setting a trap? I think she's setting
candle. It starts with the candle. All right. So let's see who's going to go next. How about we're going to go backwards. So how about we go Cory, and then we'll come back around to Randy. Sound good? Oh yeah, Cory, how are we going to do this? Maybe I should have picked Randy.
I mean, you can leave me for last just because it'll be odd. It'll be different. So
Yeah, let's do that. Let's leave you for last. Randy, you go next. Which is honestly, Randy's just as weird. You know, we were all supposed to be weird, so that's a bonus.
Yeah, so my story is called The White Savior Does Not Save the Day. And it's told alternating in like movie script format and prose, about a girl named Perdita Jones who collects kind of as much as she can about merchandise related to the White Savior, which is a superhero that exists in her world. So this is just going to be like the opening of it. Yeah, which is in movie script format. So I'm going to read a lot of that like really annoying directional stuff. Cut to exterior coastal city on a Pacific island day. A siren wails through an empty Southeast Asian city where clusters of buildings cling to a picturesque crescent-shaped coastline. Along an abandoned beach, palm trees sway beneath a stormy sky and vacant fishing boats sit in an eerily placid gray bay. In the distance, a low rumble. Cut to interior school building day. Generic Southeast Asian children and their generic Southeast Asian teachers scream and cry. They are very brown-skinned. They are desperately attempting to escape the building, but their efforts are in vain. A mysterious force has sealed all exits, trapping everyone inside. As they yell for help in some untranslated language, one child stares fearfully out a window facing the sea. Cut to exterior school building day. Generic Southeast Asian rescuers struggle to open the front door of the school. They work with a calm urgency, occasionally stealing glances at the water. Cut to exterior sea day. On the horizon, a wave. At first, there's no frame of reference to gauge its size, but as it approaches, the crest dwarfs an industrial fishing boat and easily sweeps the vessel into its swell, a tsunami. Cut to interior school building day. The children and teachers continue panicking as they scream and bang on the doors. A teacher tosses a chair at a window, but the window does not even crack. Cut to exterior school building day. Rescuers determinedly work to force open the front door with the jaws of life. Though their efforts seem futile at first, the metal eventually starts to bend. Cut to exterior sea day. The rumble grows louder as the tsunami nears. Its expansive first wave begins to break, with whitecaps at least 40 or 50 feet high, swallowing the boat stuck out at sea. Cut to exterior school building day. The rescuers pry open the front doors of the school enough to see the panicked faces of the children inside. Using all their strength, they crank the tool and widen the opening inch by inch until it's large enough for someone to pass through. A rescuer reaches out an open hand to begin the evacuation. As the first child is about to take the hand, the building suddenly begins to tremble, knocking everyone off their feet. As it continues shaking, there's a deep groaning from beneath the ground, and then the sound of concrete cracking. The rescuer turns to look over his shoulder, expecting to see that the tsunami is upon them, that they've failed. Cut to exterior sea day. The massive tsunami is closer, but still some distance away from the shore. Cut to exterior school building day. Confusion sweeps over the rescuer's face. He turns back to the school building, but it's gone. In its place, a crater veined with broken pipes and torn wires. He is confused, but then another rescuer points upward at the school building, ripped from the ground like an uprooted plant, somehow flying through the air. Cut to interior school building day. The children and teachers press their faces to the windows. Their fears turn to confusion as they fly out over the sea, leaving behind the danger of the tsunami. Cut to exterior school building day. White Savior is carrying the building from below as she soars through the air. Her white cape flutters in the wind, and her yellow hair flows perfectly behind her head like a golden comet's tail. Her glowing blue eyes focus on the horizon. Thanks to her superhuman strength, carrying the building causes her no strain. However, she seems exhausted, as if she's had a long day. Eventually, she sets the building down in an open field and tears the front doors open the rest of the way. White Savior smiles and waves as the generic Southeast Asian children and teachers emerge from the building, blinking into the sunlight. They are very brown-skinned. White Savior, don't worry, you're safe now. A teacher steps forward and asks something in a foreign language. White Savior, you want a selfie, I suppose? I'm in a bit of a rush, but okay. White Savior takes out her phone, snaps a selfie with the generic Southeast Asians in the background, and uploads it to her feed. As the teacher continues trying to talk to her, White Savior waves goodbye and takes to the air. ...
Fantastic. Oh, wow. Yeah, that opening scene. Oh, man. Awesome stuff, Randy. Thank you. All right, Cory, let's give it a shot. What are we going to do? We're going to show some pictures. You're going to read a little script. What do you think?
You
I should explain really quickly to those watching that Cory's story. Okay, you understand that I basically dared my favorite, like my favorite YA writers, even if they didn't know it. I don't know if Randy even understands that I'm a mega fan. I don't think he knew that. But I dared, I asked these writers to write me a story, but it was specifically that it would be weird. And Cory's, without giving you the whole thing, looks like this. And it's fantastic. And so, Cory, how are you going to read us the opening to this, or whatever part you want to read?
I'm honestly going to start with the content advisory, because I think a lot of people miss an opportunity when they don't make it part of the story.
I love it.
And set the tone. I love them. Including if I call them content warning or content advisory. And this one is called a content warning, and that is on purpose. So we're gonna start there. And this has no pictures. So just very aggressive courier font that we fought hard for. Yes. Content warning: violence, guns, hate culture, bigots, assault, patriarchy, Me Too, homophobia, transphobia, hate crime, abuse, genocide, fat phobia, mankind, assassinations, the unsinkable American dream, and more of the same. So, yeah, I don't really know how to. It's weird. You said weird. I went weird with it. I'm going to show you this because it just. So it starts off with our museum sign, Museum of Misery. Free admission, all hours, waking or not. The waking or not really made my therapist laugh. And I dedicated this story to him because he's a brilliant person. I'm just going to read the first 2 or 3 pages and show it to you, but I'm going to stay away from the heavier stuff at the end. Welcome. There is no line outside the Museum of Misery. Only a picket of stanchions. One wears words like a hat. This way, not that. You head in. And then I'm not going to read the map key, but it is also a poem. This is the one I'm going to read because it's my favorite. I read it to you, then I show you the picture. Atrium. Above the dome, the sky. Below the dome, the skeleton that came out of their closet. It's you. And the little sign here, over here, says, pull me to make me wave. I can't tell if is it backwards for you all, or has Zoom learned to, okay, good for Zoom. Yeah. And I will read this next page just because it's Amy's favorite. Help desk. The docent is your mother. Back again so soon? She marks your card. Her brain can't see you. And there's your card. And it says free breakdown with your next visit. That's a reading from that one.
Fantastic.
We had a lot of fun turning that into an audiobook version.
We did. And it sounds fantastic as well. So if any of you are audio listeners and you want to have a different view of that story, if that makes sense, to have a different view of the same story, but it's the views through your ears, I don't know. Oh, hold on, I should read a little something. Shoot, I was like, will I, won't I? And people are like, no, you should. So I'm going to read a tiny little. I'm just going to read the very beginning of mine. Thank you, Cory. That was fantastic. And thanks for reading my favorite one. The docent is your mother is probably one of my favorite lines. Although O negative personality, and Randy, there's a bunch in yours. I don't even know. I have so many favorite. I never realized, and David, I guess you can, I don't know, this must be the situation. Maybe we'll talk about it later. I never realized how much I was going to love and adore stories that I was editing, like in these ways that and remember, that you remember lines for, what's with that? Remembering lines. I can't remember lines from my own books. I hand them to you. I'm like, I think this is gibberish. And then I walk away from it. And yet I remember lines from every single story in this, and some paragraphs. It's just weird. Anyway, my story is called We Are Looking for Home, and these are the wrong glasses because I am a bit of an old chap. All right, here we go. We are looking for home. We start in the garden, of course. We start with our snowsuits on, numb cheeks, snot frozen to the ends of our noses. We start dumb like everybody else. We start hungry. We don't know how to do what we do, but we do it anyway. We do it all anyway. These are the best years of our life. We go to school and learn things we will forget. We have accumulated trillions of memories between us, amassed tragedies, gathered all kinds of matter. Humans collect everything. We collect galaxies of information. We collect photographs. We collect the right thing to do in any situation, and we collect the wrong things to do too. We are curators of joy and misery. We collect ourselves. We are dangerous. The only humans who aren't dangerous are the ones who are looking for home. No one can be dangerous when looking for home, or at least it's not a wise approach. Home is a big deal. Nobody can find it. Jasper Miller got close once, brought the photograph to class and showed us, 9th grade. It's home, he said. The picture was of cat litter. There was some cat shit in the litter. We mocked him for being so bad at humor, for being morose, for being cynical. We mocked him for his pimples and greasy hair. We were unstable compounds jammed into a test tube. We bubbled out and overflowed into Jasper Miller every one of our fears. For any of us, home could be cat shit. We just didn't like to think about it. Jasper Miller didn't talk to us for a year after that. He learned to live without us. He pretended to be fine with it. Almost everyone pretends. That's why we can't find home. When the world fell apart, it wasn't the biology that started it. Nothing to do with atoms or chemistry, nothing to do with our pinky fingers getting smaller, nothing to do with the climate. It was psychology that ended us, poked holes in our brains until we couldn't function with each other, without each other. We are a team now. They ruined us. They salvaged us. We stick together. We don't care about home. We have too much work to do to worry about dumb things like home. We are afraid to be alone. Yeah. That's what I came up with. Yay. So that is the beginning of that story, which is written from the point of view of a collective of basically America's 40 million-ish teenagers. And it's really a story about, I don't really know, breaking out of a group and becoming an individual, I think. And also the inner voices that keep us from doing it and also push us to do it in the end, and the inner voices that we end up carrying through our life. I'm now 53 years old, and I finally just kicked out some of the earliest inner voices I've had. So if there are young people, or any people, actually, I don't care how old you are, if you still have things in your head that are nasty, and you hear yourself saying, just stop it, just do me a favor, stop saying terrible things to yourself, because it really, a year of noticing changed me. And this story helped change me, which is why I write stories, right? Okay, well, anyway, all right. So I want you guys to, talk to me about what it was like to write something, to be asked specifically to write something weird. Was it scary? Was it strange? Not to say any of you don't write weird stuff. You've written weird stuff. I mean, it wasn't totally out of your wheelhouse, but at the same time, I did say, there are no rules. How scary was that? Was that weird? Really just to ask you was it easy to let go? And did you feel that it really served the story that you wrote, that kind of thing? How did it all feel? Looking at it from this side. And Randy, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so I'd say for me, it was it was like very liberating to be able to do that. I'm somebody who's drawn towards, I guess, the unconventional, always have been. You know, a lot of my tastes, I tend to like things that like not a lot of people like sometimes, or like has a really small, passionate following. And so, you know, one of my favorite books of all time is a book written kind of at the start of the Harlem Renaissance called Cain by Jean Toomer, which, if you haven't read it before, it's like a weird mixture of like short stories and poetry and even like a section of like drama, like written in like a drama script format. And I really love it. And a lot of people, when I bring it up, they're like, ugh, no, I hate that. But I've always like really been fascinated by stuff with like different forms, with like experimental forms. And yeah, and you know, publishing like doesn't have much of a patience for form experimentation, I don't think, right? It's like you write in prose, you tell a story, you know, a lot of times people are like, okay, well, you follow the save the cat beats of storytelling, right? And that kind of thing. Which I'm like averted to. And so yeah, so when you said this, I was like, oh, I'm gonna mess with form, right? I'm gonna like do what I want with form. And yeah, so I kind of started with that idea of just like, what different forms do I want to use, and just kind of like letting, I don't know, I guess like letting my subconscious kind of guide the story in that way of kind of like not, I didn't start out with a clear idea of like, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this is why I'm going to do this form and so on and so forth, and kind of found that, I think, along the way, kind of understanding like just letting myself play at first in those first initial drafts, and then kind of reining it in a little bit and kind of be like, okay, well, how does form serve this particular story, or how could it serve the story, right? And kind of refining that kind of as we went on, and as we went, you know, I got your feedback and the different rounds of revision. And yeah, and it was kind of good because it was kind of like that, I think, a good mixture of that, like letting my mind open and run free, but then also trying to think about, okay, well, now how does this stuff actually connect in some kind of coherent way, not for the sake of like toning down the weirdness, but I would think for the sake of like telling a good story and thinking about why I might have been subconsciously making some of these choices, and kind of drawing that out a little bit more clearly.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that it was subconscious, because I mean, that the surrealist method, right, is really subconscious. It's really sort of, you don't think about what's going on the page, and you don't think about what's going on the page tomorrow or the next day, which is why that whiteboard behind me and all the things that are on, I'm in the middle of this novel. It's been 2.5 years, driving me crazy. And I joke because that whiteboard saved me so much, because I actually said, I want to walk across. I want to do like the Tom Hanks, Forrest Gump, just walk across the country and then turn around and walk back, but I'm going to take my whiteboard with me. Now the wheels aren't really great on it, so there's no way. I'd have to get like Greg Neri to maybe put some cool like skateboard wheels on it, but I love that, because I do the same. And half my stories, half my books, more than half my books end up on the cutting room floor, but then I find the story and then I figure out what serves it. And I think that's the thing about weird stuff too. Anything can work if it's done well, but you have to do it well. So you have to first get the stuff out and then go, what's this mean? And then put it all together and try and figure out how to make it work. And you certainly did that, Randy. So awesome. You guys, I don't know, fight it out. Whoever unmutes first gets to talk next. Neither of you're both stubborn. This is why you're like, that's not even fair. I'm just going to skip you two then. Forget it. Me and Randy are just going to do show and tell. All right, Cory.
I did it. I unmuted. Well, I'm going to throw a question back at you, Amy, which is, do you remember how different my first draft was?
I have it sitting right over there. I look at it. I look at the pile. I looked at the pile the other day, and yeah, I do remember it, and I loved it. It had so much more poetry, though. And what was amazing is that you stripped out so many words, and
it was all poetry. Yeah, I decided to stay because I was very intimidated I was very excited. I had been talking to you about this anthology and about your obsession with collections, right? And the psychology behind it, the anthropology behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked me about collections, and I was in a weird headspace. Man and Work kept me in a weird headspace for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I think I said to you, my mother collects misery and she tends it inside of me like a garden.
Very close.
You were like, would you write that for me? And I was like, absolutely not. My mother's still alive. But I do tend to approach my stories with, I need a flood water's worth of emotion behind a subject for me to really engage with my stories at this point. So the first draft was just memoir poetry. And he gave it to you because I trust you, because you're an amazing editor and an incredible friend and a wonderful big sister to me. And I trusted it with you, but I also knew that it was going to change. My stuff changes drastically from draft to draft. And it was that skeleton, that atrium picture. I was writing it and I was so pleased with myself for coming up with the skeleton that came out of the closet. It's you. And I wanted to draw that because I believe in darkness and humor together. I believe they're married and they have a very successful marriage. And so I needed to find there was no humor, I don't think, in the poetry version. But then when I started drawing, I started taking words out, like whole poems, just tossing them and being like, what I wanted to say is just in this image.
Never thought of that. You just really made me see something, because I had to look at that first draft again, but I forgot. Yeah, you're right. It was heavy. It was very good. The poetry was fantastic. And then when you brought the second one in, I was like, wait a second, where'd all the poems go? Did you say like? And I still trusted you, and I was like, what? But you're right. It added the humor, or I don't want to call it humor, but a little levity, we'll say, levity to the whole thing for sure.
Yeah, the grinning skulls at you, I think, helps. It does something.
Yeah.
For the subject matter, but I do remember messaging you and saying, I know you said weird. Can I draw for this? And I don't mean a graphic novel. I mean, can I draw? And I think I sent you what I was doodling. And I actually I have a visual disability, and I am legally blind without my glasses. And when I take them off, that's how I see the world. They're just hard lines. There's just everything has been stripped down into a couple hard lines. And I love drawing what I see. And I've never really had an opportunity to do it before this. So you believed in me, and also you fielded that. I think I texted you and I said, can I write you something that's if Shel Silverstein lived through live shooter drills? And and
I said yes. And I was in a supermarket in North Carolina when I got your first, like, hey, here's what I'm thinking about. And I immediately texted them to, the editor, Andrew Carr, who edited this book. And he wrote back before I was in the dairy section and said, yes, please. And I said, okay. And then I wrote back to you. So yeah. Okay, cool. I'm glad. I'm thrilled that, I'm thrilled that it worked in all kinds of ways. And David, what about you? What was your experience like?
I didn't do the assignment. I learned, but no, my story isn't weird at all. But I think that it's interesting to discuss nonetheless, because I think, well, I'll put a little asterisk there. I think that what was interesting to me is that I was very excited when you were like, be as weird as you want, write a weird story. But then you also said, write a story about a collection. And I found that like, I just can't do two assignments at the same time. That like, when the idea for the collection, partially because of the name of the collection part of it felt like the more urgent one. How do I have this angle about a collection that none of the other authors are going to choose? And so the whole idea of collecting from other people's collections, that was sort of the conceit. And once I had that conceit, I knew what the story was going to be, and it wasn't particularly weird, but I liked it. So I was like, you know what? And I did, again, not having read anybody else's stories, but knowing who else was in the book, I felt comfortable that like my story, and this is where the asterisk is, my story was going to be the kind of weird that's just a little bit off. Like it's going to be representative of that kind of weirdness, that it's not tonally, it is different than my normal stories, but just by a little bit. And that was interesting to me, to just in a collection where I was sure that there were going to be people playing with form and playing with just like amazing, like bravura ways of weirdly telling stories. I was like, I kind of like the idea of just being the guy who is a little bit off. And that's sort of where I think the word I used when I submitted the story to you was pedestrian. I felt that I had written a very pedestrian story, but within the context that kind of worked for me. But it wasn't, I feel that if you had been like, I'm doing a collection called Weirdos, write me a weird story, I would have written a completely bonkers story, like playing with form and playing with everything. But because there was also a topic attached, for whatever reason, the topic was what I swerved to. And then once I swerved there, I was unable to sort of swerve back. And again, I'm very happy with the story. So this is not self-deprecation, but it was just fascinating to me that basically I privileged one part of the assignment over the other.
Well, it's funny because we had this conversation, and one of the things I loved was that you wrote exactly what came from you naturally, right? Like, and that's the thing. I was like, I think there might be love, and that's what. Look, you write love. Look, we're gonna be in a panel together at Comic-Con, and I was like, wait, is that a romance panel? And somebody's like, you wrote a romance panel? We all laughed. And I was like, yeah, that's funny. But at the same time, you know what you're doing with that. And I mean, I'm about to kind of walk out into a whole different world of writing, actually, once I'm done the novel I'm writing. And I think you guys, I don't know, this all help me. By the way, David, I'm gonna pitch Weirdos.
I mean,
the anthology.
I'm totally on board. Like, get the same cast of authors together to write Weirdos.
My gosh, can you imagine?
We would have so much fun.
Yeah, no, and I don't consider your story pedestrian at all, but it's funny because there's, and I understand what you're saying, that one took precedent, and I get it. Like, I mean, when I was writing my story, like I wrote it the same as I write books. I had no idea. I just had no idea, which is really frustrating. To be honest, my process really drives me crazy. Like, it's really terrible, absolutely disgusting and beautiful, like all at the same time. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I love it so much. Like, it's just, that's my process. And even if I'm writing like a normal book, like my middle grade, right? My middle grade tends to be more very straightforward, and it's layered, but it's straightforward. But I still use that method. It's so annoying, wonderful, annoying, terrible. I hate it. It's so great. So it's sort of one of those things. And I'm just really glad that you guys, and I have to say, just because David's here, not to embarrass him or freak him out or anything, but David, everybody wrote me these lovely letters when because you know how hard it is to edit anybody. It's really hard to edit, first of all, and it's really hard to edit your friends. And David and he wasn't supposed to be my editor at Scholastic. It was just the other ones. I just kept wearing them out like brake pads. It was terrible. They just kept leaving, right? And suddenly it's David and I staring at each other. Like, I'm like, well, I guess
it's like the Spinal Tap drummer of Scholastic. It's like, who's it gonna be now? Oh shit, it's my turn.
It's your turn. And so it's me, I showed up, hi David, and here we are, but like, what the heck was I saying? Oh yeah, no, it was really weird editing like David. Like, it was weird editing all of you, to be honest. It was, I wanted to make sure I did a good job. And David sent me the nicest letter. Well, all of you were very nice, but David, to get a letter from your editor that says you're really good at editing made me really, I don't know, made me feel very proud of like what I was trying to do, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was winging it the same as I was winging my story, which I winged until I finally figured out what it was about 4 weeks after the arc came out. I was like, oh, I know what this story is about now. And there you go. So with only I didn't know if we have any questions. So hey, nobody has put questions in the box. So you guys, I know a few of you here, and so I'm going to kind of get on you if you don't throw a question in the box, but somebody throw a question in the box. But in the meantime, we're going to do some show and tell really quick and talk about a collection that we might have. I'm going to start because mine's easy and it's right here. I went to a what is it called? It's a place called Art of Recycle. It's like all these recycled kind of craft things and just stuff, right? It's all recycled stuff, reusing stuff. And I got my canvases there for cheap sometimes and other stuff. And my son and I were in there, and we went to like the back crafty section, and I found this boy with a squirrel. And I live in Amish country, so it's kind of fitting with the whole hat and everything. So he's a boy with a squirrel. Now you can't see how creepily his face is painted. You can't see how messed up his eyes are. You can't see how messed up his lips are. But see, when you add his brothers in, it gets even weirder, right? It just gets super weird because all their eyes are like a little bit like that, like they're just not quite looking at you. They're just looking right past you. Anyway, $quarter a piece, 75 cents. We took a picture of them on like the dashboard of the car because we stopped at a diner on our way home. And Oh yeah, that kid, his eyes are really weird. Anyway, and then Jax was like, hey, we're going to start an Instagram page called Boys with Squirrels. And I'm like, sure. And then it didn't last very long because he, I would send him pictures, and then he was like, no filters. I was like, that's too many rules. And I was out. The point is, I then went to buy him 3 because I thought in life he should also have 3 Boys with Squirrels. Now, that meant that I then went to eBay and wrote Boys with Squirrels. And then suddenly what you can't see is the collection in my kitchen of all the other Boys with Squirrels, because these were not available the first time. I just bought a few other random ceramic ones. And then I did find these guys, and I found 3 of them, but they didn't come by themselves. They came with girls with mice. Oh yeah. So now I have boys with squirrels and girls with mice. And then one of the boys with squirrels arrived with no, like his legs were severed here, which was really tragic. I have him actually stuck in the sand of a Zen garden I have downstairs. And so then I have 4 girls with mice and 3 boys with squirrels. Anyway, there's a lot of boys with squirrels. That's the end of the story that's my show and tell. What do you got? Somebody just toss something in. What do you got? Go ahead, Cory. I see you reaching. I see you.
Well, because I had to dig some things out for this, but when my spouse and I, who's also an author, when we started on this lovely publishing path over a decade ago, there's like a long time between things happening. Like you sell a book and then 900 years later it comes out, and like you're on to like so many other books. It's hard to celebrate. So we decided that we would celebrate by let me show you one of my first ones, by collecting action figures, but only female action figures, which are very rare because of sexism. Toy companies do not believe that anyone would want to play with a woman, so they don't make any of them. Sometimes they do, and then they don't carry them in store and no one buys them, and then they say, haha, no one wanted them after all, which is also something they do with gay books. That's neither here nor there. Anyway,
actually it's right here.
I've got Scully here because Scully then turned into the next Scully, and then when they rebooted X-Files, I got the 3rd Scully. And by the way, her shoes got a lot worse. I mean, she's not going after people. Look at that. Like, look at how practical those ones are. Anyway, so we have a huge box. We got an action figure and they're really hard to find. Like and I just took out some of my favorite ones. And if I have any Hellboy fans out there, we have Liz Sherman, and then also Liz Sherman on Fire, which I feel like is a really important, double one. And then Amy, this one's for you.
Ooh. Is it She-Ra?
It's She-Ra.
Oh, I love She-Ra.
It's Nate Stevenson's She-Ra, which is the best She-Ra, I have to say. I did have the original She-Ra when I was a small child.
She-Ra.
Yeah, so those are just some of my favorite. Wait, actually, this one is my favorite because it's super expensive, and I'm going to show you why. You got, who else likes Underworld? Come on, it's the best vampires. Can you even see that? Her eyes glow.
Oh, keep her
There's
close.
a battery
That's
in the
so
back of her head. This is so
spooky.
creepy. You could put this in my son's room and then turn it on, and then he finds it glowing later. No, I don't do that to him, baby. I do. But we've actually stopped. We've moved on to collecting other things now. Now we're selling our collection to help pay our bills, because that is the way authors roll through, and to keep writing more books. Yeah.
Thank you. I love that. And She-Ra, if it wasn't for, it was Jackson who turned to me soon after, like it was just the 2 of us in the house, and looked at me and said, you know what you need? You need She-Ra. Sit down. And that was it. We were on that couch for every night until we were done. That was fantastic. Kids, he was totally right too. I did need She-Ra more than anything. What about you guys? Who's going next? Oh, it's like the quick draw. All right, Randy, go for it. I'm just picking you. David, I'm leaving you over there in the cold.
David should go because there's a train about to pass by my place and it's super loud.
Gotcha.
All right, now I'll just say, I mean, basically I collected as a kid, it was Matchbox cars, stuffed animals, action figures, anything that I could give a name and play with as if they were people. Like that's what I would do. It's so funny. Like one of my most like intense memories was going through and taking my mom to like every Toys R Us there was, looking for the Marion Ravenwood figure for Raiders of the Lost Ark, which like I don't think that, do you have one? Like they didn't sell them in New Jersey. Like literally we must have opened like 200 boxes of Raiders of the Lost Ark figures looking for this one figure that I was like obsessed with finding, which I should have told my parents everything they needed to know about me. And I never found it. Like I truly, that was the Lost Ark for me, was that little Marion Ravenwood action figure. But my pride and joy, I must say, is that I've never found anybody else who was so extensive with their action figure collection. I have the complete set of Love Boat action figures, which really, I don't think there was much demand. I think I did get them from the bargain bin, but my Julie McCoy action figure is definitely treasured to me.
That is the best. I mean, Isaac's the best. The Isaac is my favorite to this day. Cory, did you say that you actually have that action figure?
I do have that action figure.
You see, you're just much cooler than I am.
I really wish I could, like, I almost, while you were talking, dove into the box to try to find it, but it's like a box of, I mean, we have like 80, 90 at this point.
Wow.
But when I find it, I will be emailing you.
Yeah, just send me a picture just so I can.
It came with a frying pan and a monkey. They come with the most bizarre accessories.
Yeah.
But it was, that we really looked for that Marion one, because Marion's wonderful.
Yes, she is. That was an early crush for me.
Yeah,
big time. That was a what do you call that? A ha-ha moment for me. Randy, what you got?
Yeah, so mine's pretty straightforward. So I never read a book by a Filipino or Filipino-American author until I got to college. And even then, I kind of had to seek it out on my own. So now, I obviously, as an author, collect a lot of books, but I collect books by Filipino-American authors, of all kinds, fiction, nonfiction, YA, middle grade, children's. And so, whereas growing up in my house, there were 0, I now have like 2.5 full shelves of books that my son will hopefully someday read. And my most recent one that I want to show you is right here. It's called Searching for Mora. It was originally like a comic that was on the Washington Post website / I think paper.
What's it called again? Searching for
Mara, M-A-U-R-A. And it is the real story of a Filipino woman who was taken from the Philippines in the early 1900s and brought to the United States for the World's Fair Exposition in St. Louis in, I think, 1904, 1906, one of those 2 years, because they had gone and brought kind of a bunch of Filipinos over and kind of put them on display at this World's Fair, kind of like a human zoo, like, hey, look at how savage these people are. And so these reporters, these investigative reporters at the Washington Post kind of looked into, well, what happened to some of these people? And they kind of zeroed in on one of the women in particular to kind of trace, well, like, what happened to her afterwards, and what happened to her body. And so it's a really interesting story about kind of what happened at that time, as well as like U.S. colonial relations with the Philippines, as well as kind of how people were treated, and kind of that whole process of like uncovering that and kind of reclaiming these histories for ourselves. So yeah,
fantastic. Wow, I'm totally grabbing that. That sounds amazing. I do have a question in the box. Paul, I'm going to disappoint you with the answer to this question, because, well, except that I'm not, because I think that I don't know is probably one of the best answers somebody can give if they don't know. But the question is, how did you find Matt Hollinshead's artwork for your cover design? It's got a great apothecary feel. I agree with you. It's got a great feel, all right. But I didn't find it. I have no idea. That is totally like the job of, people inside the house. And I'm pretty sure, I know Andrew Carr probably, had some suggestions and said, hey, how about this? And they had conversations. But for when it came down to it, I had no say in it whatsoever. All I got was, actually, this was sort of the original cover with these cutout letters. And then originally these were going to be a little bit different. when it came to the names, and that didn't work out. They were going to be in like every box, and I was like, that's too busy. So somebody really smart came up with the way that to put the authors' names in there and put these random things in there. But I have absolutely no idea where that. Oh, thank you. Oh, Randy just put a cool link down in the bottom for searching for Mara. Thank you. Down in the chat, not the bottom. That makes no sense, but it is the bottom of the chat. So I have no idea, Paul, but somebody somewhere must have seen that, and I think it makes a really perfect cover for this. I have to say, I'm a picky cover person, but I also am not. When it's when you see it, you're like, do I like it? And you have to walk around with it for a while. It's a bit like, I don't know, boyfriends or something, I guess. You have to walk around with them for a while to figure out if you like them or not. Anyway, that was a strange analogy, but it's us, and we're talking about weird stuff. So if you have another question, if anybody's like, oh, I've been shy up till now, you got exactly 4 minutes, throw it in the Q&A box and I can answer it. Otherwise, let me ask these guys. Oh, here's one from Bethany. How different of a process was it for you to work with a shorter form? Did you find challenges or delights about your pieces that are different than you usually write? I will say my own answer first, which is when I finally could write a decent short story, which was after I could write a decent novel, to be honest with you, it then changed how my novels looked. When I learned how to write a good short story, it changed everything about how I wrote novels. I can say that for sure. And I love short work. I teach short story up at the college, and it's one of my favorite things. I love short form. What about you guys? I mean, Randy, you had how many out this year? Randy had like 6 short stories out this year. Am I right, Randy?
Only 5.
Only 5. Oh,
yeah.
just the 5. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like it. It's fun for me. I have a short attention span. I think I'm kind of naturally drawn to short fiction. I think even my stories, if you read them, kind of have like they're more like a vignette kind of feel than like a long novel. And I like short stories because they also allow me to experiment and to try something new. Short stories are kind of where I kind of try different genres or try different techniques. Yeah, and in terms of writing process, they're pretty similar, but it's just a lot nicer because since it's shorter, you can go through your writing process a lot faster rather than taking years and years and years. It takes weeks or maybe a couple months or something. But yeah, overall, it's fun for me to branch out in short stories.
Nice. What about you guys? David, how's it for you? I mean, you write short stories all the time, really, don't you?
Yeah, no, I mean, at the risk of being like, oh, kids today, but it's like when I was a teenager, it never occurred to me that I would write a novel. I just wanted to write short stories. And I think I became a writer on short stories. And as you know, Amy, my junior year of high school, I started writing a story for my friends for Valentine's Day every year. And that's the one deadline I have every year. I might not write a novel in every year, but I certainly better write a short story. So I actually have written more short stories than I have anything else. But that truly because that was what made me fall in love with writing. Poetry came later. I wasn't naturally a poet. Many of my writing friends started with poetry and branched out, but for me, for whatever reason, it was short stories was what got me in to begin with. So it very much felt comfortable.
David, wow, when we see each other next week, there's one more event just to say, and if anybody's in the Philly area, David and I are going to be live on Sunday, the 1st of October, in the Philadelphia area up at Children's Book World in Haverford. And I'm going to talk to you about short stories because I have to tell you, like, I would dedicate the rest of my life to somehow publishing short stories. They're my favorite. Cory, what about you? How did it feel to go short story for you? When was the last time you wrote a short story? When was the last time you were in like an anthology or something like that?
I've done a couple co-authored short stories with my spouse.
That's right.
I find short form to be exquisitely difficult, and I mean that and that I love it, and so I have to challenge myself with my writing. Like I have to, like, it has to be hard, and so I find that short stories are very difficult. And I like that when my brain knocks against it, and when my brain tries to add more things and do more things, and I'm like, no, you have to stay on this path. And I think I was really excited to do a short story for this, and then I started drawing, and then I started drawing a lot, and then I accidentally drew a whole picture book, technically, for this. Because I was like, wow, this is such a well-paid short story. And then I was like, except you drew a whole picture book. But that is, I feel like part of the joy of doing this. I don't know. Yeah, I love short form. I mean, I aspire to short story writing more than I actively do it at this point.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. So I just want to say, hey, Elizabeth put the link to how to purchase the collectors in the chat. It's the last thing in the chat. Right before then, our guy asked me, and hello, Randy, how's it going? I can't tell you my favorite cover. I mean, I love the original Dig cover, but I love Switch. I like a lot of covers. I mean, I like them all. So there's a few I don't like. We can talk about that somewhere else because you don't say stuff like that out loud when you're here in the public. But I have to say I've been very lucky. I've been really, actually, they used to say to me, Amy wins the cover lottery every time, and I kind of feel like that's true. So I've been incredibly fortunate with covers. You guys, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for writing me a really cool story. Thank you for all the things. And you guys, yeah, do please order the book if you're thinking, oh, somebody would love this book, or I have a teacher who may not have this in their classroom. Buy an extra copy for your teacher friend. Use the link that's right there in the chat. And thank you so much for supporting independent booksellers by coming here tonight and seeing us and supporting us. Yay us.
Yay! Thank you so much, Amy. Amy really said it all. Before I let you all go, though, can you share where people can follow you on the internet and follow along with your upcoming work as well?
I'm so glad you said that, because that was my last question for everybody, which is what's next. So I'll just say you can find me on the internet. Pretty much just type in A.S. King and you'll find me, but I'm on Instagram mostly is my favorite. I don't go to that Twitter place, even though it's called something else anymore, though I'm still there. It's very hard to explain. I forgot my password and I haven't been able to log in, which is fine by me. I do want to say that the novel I'm writing has Twitter all through it, and would have been so cool because her mom was such a badass on Twitter, and this is the kind of stuff she'd say on Twitter. And I'm like, you wrecked it, you silly man with too much money. What's wrong with you? And that's kind of what happened to me. But you can find me those places, as-king.com. And my next book is coming out, I think next year. It's called Pick the Lock, and it's about wow, it's about a lot. I'll leave it at that. Cory, you're unmuted. Go for it. What's next? What's coming up?
I have a book coming out next month. Don't ask me what day. What's it called? Some assembly required. It's the third book in a trilogy. See, this is what I mean by, like, I titled this book very many years ago. And I haven't had to think. When it gets to like 2 to 3 weeks beforehand, all of a sudden your brain turns it back on, but I haven't turned the switch yet. You can find out about any of my books and my spouse's books, because supporting either of us supports this house and makes this happen. You can find us at onceinfuturestories.com. And we are not on social media anymore because it took too much time from our writing. So let's check out we try to keep the website interesting.
Awesome. David, how about you?
Again, I'm not going to say anything new. I'm going to go back to Ryan and Avery, the 2-week-old book. Please support that one. And if you want to find me, really the only place to find me is in an independent bookstore between Gerald Carson Levine and C.S. Lewis. That's where I'll be.
Awesome.
I'm online, randyribay.com, mostly Instagram at randyribay. And my next book comes out next year, I think August, called Everything We Never Had, which is about father and son relationships and 4 generations of a Filipino-American family.
Incredible. Once again, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting our independent bookstore, Schuler Books. Once again, I will just invite you all, if you're ever in Michigan, to stop by our brick and mortar locations in Grand Rapids, Okemos, Ann Arbor, and West Bloomfield, or check out our website at schulerbooks.com. We ship all over the world, and you can find many of these titles that we have talked about today, as well as the collectors, on our website. And I hope you all have a lovely evening.
Thank you so much. And you guys, we're all about to, like, minute she hits gone, we're all leaving. So it was gorgeous to see all your faces, and have a great night. And thanks so much for everything.
Thank you, everyone.
See ya.